Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and master certified life coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, today we're talking about wisdom and whether or not you're really older and wiser. And you know what? It just may surprise you. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle, where we are all about how to get unstuck, clear, and excited about your next chapter, especially if you're in your 50s and 60s and feeling like life is just too short to keep waiting. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your master certified coach, midlife self-leadership mentor, and certified Zentangle teacher. And I am so glad to be here with you again. Now, today's show was inspired by something I saw online when I was scrolling around, and it stopped me in my tracks. It was about wisdom. I thought I would share a definition about wisdom to get us started. It's the ability to make good judgments based on what you have learned from your experience or the knowledge and understanding that gives you this ability. And of course, we're going to take a deep dive into how wisdom relates to you in midlife. But just quick. Feeling stuck or unclear about what you want to be, it can be so frustrating, and I know this personally. I have been there myself. So if you've been waiting to feel excited about your life again, like when you wait until you finally have clarity, you don't have to. A next chapter direction session is a private conversation to help you see what's actually going on, including whether you're already further along than you think. You can book yours now at www.talktosusie.com. Okay, now let's dive in. As I mentioned, today we're talking about wisdom, and specifically something I noticed a while ago that I knew I wanted to come back to. You know, when you're scrolling around and you see something and then you save it for one reason or another, that's what happened. I came across some research I saw about wisdom and aging, and the finding was basically this. Wisdom doesn't automatically come with age. Think about it. Wisdom doesn't automatically come with age. And I remember thinking, oh, that's interesting. So I saved it. I knew there was something there for me, but I didn't know exactly what. I didn't know what I wanted to say about it. I didn't have an episode planned, and I didn't know exactly how it connected to my work. I just knew this has my attention. So I kept it. And now that some time's gone by, I understand why it got my attention. Which, as it turns out, is hilariously appropriate for today's episode because I noticed before I understood. And that is something I've been thinking a lot about lately. With age comes wisdom, right? We've all heard this expression, with age comes wisdom. And frankly, I love this idea, especially as a woman in my 60s. Bring on the wisdom. I find myself telling my kids that all the time. I've earned something here, right? But apparently, it's not quite that simple. Psychologist Judith Gluck published a review in Current Opinion in Psychology looking at the relationship between wisdom and aging. And the research is much more nuanced than older equals wiser, which is, what I was thinking. Different aspects and measures of wisdom, they show different relationships with age. And one of the review's key conclusions is that it's neither simply getting older nor accumulating life experiences. Those things aren't enough. They're not enough by themselves. That's not what makes us wise. That second part really got me because, of course, getting older gives us something younger people don't have as much of yet, right? Experience. We've simply had more time to accumulate it. Relationships, careers, friendships, marriage, divorce, parenting, maybe caregiving, success, failure, health challenges, loss, risk, joy, lots of disappointment by now, right? Things that went exactly as planned, that happened too. Things that blew up spectacularly, of course. Sometimes that happens. We've had a lot of life. But here's the distinction I want to play with today. Experience is not automatically wisdom. Experience gives us raw material, and that's where wisdom can be built from, right? It comes from the raw material. And I think that's a really important distinction. Wisdom, I think it's something that we build. So I started thinking about it like building a foundation with cinder blocks. So stay with me here. Okay. Life keeps handing you material. You have a difficult conversation or you try something new. Maybe you make a mistake or you realize a friendship has changed. I've heard all of these things and experienced some of it myself. Maybe you become unexpectedly jealous of somebody or feel that envy that I've talked about so many times. Something you used to enjoy starts feeling like an obligation. Maybe you take a trip and feel more alive than you felt in months. Sometimes something gets canceled and you notice how incredibly relieved you are. Or maybe you fall in love with something completely unexpected. You realize, I don't want this anymore. Or maybe, I really want more of this. Those are experiences, but they're not automatically wisdom. The wisdom comes from what you do with the experience. Do you notice it? Do you get curious about it? Do you reflect? Do you think about it? Do you learn something about yourself? Do you allow what you've learned to matter? Do you use it to inform how you live, maybe how you make decisions? That's where I think the wisdom block gets built. And then another, and another, and another. So that's what I've been playing with. My own definition of wisdom, something like this. Wisdom is becoming increasingly skilled at learning from your own life. Think about that. Wisdom is becoming increasingly skilled at learning from your own life, not knowing everything. Because, of course, we're going to still make mistakes. Not having all the answers either, right? Because who does? You have lots of answers. I have lots of answers, but I don't have them all. Not becoming some all-knowing wise woman. I know I think of myself that way sometimes. But it doesn't just happen because you turned 60 and somebody handed you a ceremonial sash. Although I would totally wear the sash. But what I'm talking about is learning from your own life. And what's fascinating is that the psychological research on wisdom includes qualities such as curiosity, questioning your own beliefs, awareness of uncertainty, considering different perspectives, compassion, and openness. Developmental models also look at how characteristics such as things like openness, creativity, mentorship, and other personal resources interact, how they interact with your life experiences in the development of wisdom. And this is the stuff we talk about all the time here on the Women in the Middle podcast. In other words, the experiences matter, but so does how we engage with them, how we work with them, how we process them. And this is where noticing comes in. Now, I've been teaching a framework in my new webinar that describes the client journey in my work. It goes like this: noticing, then awareness, then understanding, then self-trust, and then self-leadership. And the more I've been thinking about wisdom, the more I've realized that this also helps explain how we turn the experiences of our lives into something useful. Because it all starts with noticing. Something happens and you think, why did that bother me so much? Why can't I stop thinking about that? Why did I light up when she even mentioned that? Jealous? Am I envious? Why am I so relieved that that thing got canceled or that that plan got changed? Why do I keep coming back to this idea? Why did that make me so happy? That level of thinking is noticing. You don't have an answer yet. You just notice something. Sometimes in the past, I've been calling it like a whisper or a glimpse, right? You just superficially notice it. And this is where we so often get ourselves in trouble because we're so good at squishing. Now, I may have mentioned the word squishing before on this podcast. I just love this concept of squishing because it just describes it so well to me. So you notice something for like half a second or less, and your brain immediately comes with, oh my God, that is ridiculous. You could never do that. That's too expensive. You're too old. You don't have time. What's the point? And what would you even do with that? And poof, the thing that you noticed, it just barely had a chance to become a thought. It did not even become a thought. And you squished it. You dismissed it. You made it go away. But what if you don't know what it means yet? And that's okay. Whoa, This is the piece I've been fascinated with lately, because I think we often assume that noticing should quickly lead to understanding. I notice something, therefore, what does it mean? Just like boom, boom, boom. What does it mean? Get with the program, chop, chop, And then what am I going to do about it? We just move so quickly into that realm. It has to have meaning, and I have to take action. And we want to get to the how. How am I going to use this so freaking fast? But sometimes you notice before you understand. And the gap between those two things can be significant. It could be 5 minutes. It could be 5 months. It could be 5 years, maybe longer, maybe longer. And I think that there's wisdom in learning how to tolerate that gap with patience. Now, I want to repeat that because that's like a really big concept, or at least it was for me as I was learning it firsthand. I think there's wisdom in learning how to tolerate that gap with patience, and not passive patience, not like just ignoring it, not waiting around helplessly for the universe to send you a PowerPoint presentation explaining your future, although that would be great. I mean, patient curiosity, a kind of knowing that says, I don't know what this means yet, but I know enough to know that it has my attention. Those are two completely different kinds of knowing. There's, I know this matters to me. And then there's, I know what it means and I know what I'm going to do about it. There can be a lot of life between those two ideas, moments in time. You know what I mean? Now, personally, I've done this over and over again. When I look back at my own life, I can see this pattern everywhere. Before I became a life coach, I didn't have my entire next chapter mapped out. I was stuck for 5 years. 5 years. I was looking around, asking other people what they thought I should do. I thought they knew more than I did. But one of the things I eventually let myself hear was very simple. I missed working directly with people. I already knew that. It had been there. I just hadn't understood yet where it would lead. Eventually, life coaching got my attention, even though I didn't really know what it was at that point. This was back in 2013. So I enrolled in certification, and look what happened. But I couldn't have known all of that at the beginning. The same thing happened with becoming a certified Zentangle teacher. I was drawn to it. I followed the interest. I certainly didn't know at the time that years later I'd create something called the Midlife Doodle Think Club, this concept of Doodle Think. I even bought the doodlethink.com domain years before the whole idea had fully arrived. I think it was 4 years. 4 years before I did anything with it. Something about it had my attention. And eventually it was like, oh, now I understand. And then there are things I still don't understand. I bought another domain a few years ago. It's whalework.com. WHALEWERK. Whalework.com. Now, as you know, if you've been listening a while, I love whales. I love the ocean. I love everything about all of that. The ocean has been a constant source of delight and pure joy throughout my life. When I was a kid, I remember it so well. Different things that I liked about the whole beach, the whole ocean experience. My father even took me deep sea fishing when I was 12. And I caught a barracuda that is mounted and on my wall. Believe it or not, it was done as a surprise for me from my father. Now, you might know that I really only want to host retreats on or near water as much as possible. I created whale watching mindfulness prompts years ago. And last year, I paid for an ocean science course that I haven't even started yet, but I kind of knew I needed it. I wanted it. It caught my attention. I noticed it. Now, do I know exactly what I'm going to do with all of that? No. Could it become something? Maybe. Could Whalework sit there forever as a domain that I bought once because I loved whales? It might. The point is that every interest is a destiny. Please don't leave this episode and purchase 17 domain names, by the way. But just having an interest is enough. The point is that I've learned to take seriously what repeatedly calls my attention. It's not that I immediately obey it or act on it, and I also don't assign cosmic meaning to it, although sometimes the idea that it just might be a sign does creep into my mind. But what happens is that I get curious about it. That is very different. And this is where self-trust gets interesting. I've always thought about self-trust as something that develops when you understand yourself better. And I still believe that, but lately I've realized that self-trust is also necessary before understanding. Sometimes self-trust sounds like this. I don't know what this means yet, but I trust myself enough not to dismiss it. I just love that. Because think about the alternative. We make understanding a prerequisite for taking ourselves seriously. If I can't explain why I want it, it must not matter. Or if I don't know what I do with it, why bother? Or this one, if I can't justify it, it's frivolous. No, maybe you don't know yet. Self-trust allows you to stay in relationship with yourself before you have certainty. And I think that that is such an important part of midlife, because the more you trust yourself, the less urgently you need to know everything immediately. You can say, I don't know yet. And that little word, yet, contains so much. Patience, curiosity, possibility, and trust. I really think that one of the greatest gifts of getting older is that you have more data. Now, here's where I think that aging gets really, really interesting, because one of the greatest advantages that we have at this age and stage is that we really do have more data about ourselves. We have more data about ourselves. So just think about it. At 25, you had 25 years of data. At 35, more. But now you've got decades. You have longitudinal data. And the researcher in me just loves this. You have evidence about what energizes you, what drains you, who brings out the best in you, what kinds of environments make you feel most like yourself, what you've regretted, what you haven't regretted, what you repeatedly tolerate and wish you didn't, what you thought you wanted and discovered that you didn't, what you keep coming back to, what delights you, what fascinates you, what makes you lose track of time, what makes you feel alive, when you feel that sizzle, what you may have outgrown, what you now know that you need, what matters to you, what keeps getting your attention. That is a massive data set. By simply possessing data, when you just simply have the data, that's not wisdom. You have to pay attention to it. And this is where my framework comes back in. The years give you the data. Noticing helps you see what's there. Awareness helps you recognize and name the patterns. Understanding helps you ask things like this. What am I thinking? What do I want? What does this mean to me? What have I learned? Then comes self-trust. I allow what I've learned about myself to count. I don't automatically override it. I don't automatically abandon myself because what I've learned is inconvenient. And then comes self-leadership. Now I get to decide, what do I want to do with what I know? And sometimes the self-led answer is nothing yet. I'm going to keep paying attention. That is a decision too. What first, then how? I've been talking about that on the show here, and I've been teaching it in my academy, been teaching it to my private clients. What first, then how? This concept connects directly to something I have taught for years. We love the how. How feels productive. How feels like we're doing something. How gives us a list. We love lists. But if we rush to the how before we understand what, we're building without a foundation. We have to know what we want before we rush to how we're going to apply it, implement it, make it happen. And this is where I keep seeing those cinder blocks. Every time you stay with an experience long enough to learn from it, every time you recognize a pattern, every time you admit, ooh, I contributed to that, every time you realize this doesn't work for me anymore, every time you discover, I freaking love this, every time you trust yourself enough to say, I don't understand this yet, but I'm going to keep paying attention. All of those things, you're building wisdom. And this is why wisdom matters so much to me, because my work has never been about accumulating insight for the sake of insight. It's about what you do with your life. My mission, I've talked about this before, my mission is that I help women learn to live like time matters, because it does. And this conversation about wisdom has helped me understand that message at another level, because if time matters, what you've learned from the time you've already lived matters too. You have decades behind you that's taught you things. Things about yourself and relationships and happiness and disappointment, things about courage and the things you love and love itself, things about what you want, things about what you absolutely do not want anymore, things about what brings you alive. So here's how I'm thinking about it now. The years give you the experience. Attention helps you turn your experience into wisdom. And self-leadership helps you use that wisdom to live like time matters. That's the point. Not to become wise so you can sit around being impressively wise. You have to use it. Let the life you've already lived inform the life you're still living. This is huge. You have to let the life you've already lived, all that experience, inform the life you're still living. And living like time matters isn't only about urgency. This is something else I've been thinking a lot about. When I say time matters, it can sound like, ooh, don't waste time, make the decision, go do the thing, you're getting older, hurry up. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, we all know time is finite. And yes, I care deeply about regret-proofing your life. But living like time matters is also about being here for it, right? Notice what delights you. Notice what fascinates you. Notice what you keep looking at. Notice what makes you laugh. Notice what makes you curious. Notice what feels beautiful. Notice what you keep wanting more of. Notice what fills you with awe and wonder. Because if time matters, what we give our attention to matters too. I just love that. If time matters, what we give our attention to matters too. And maybe part of becoming wiser isn't only learning from what hurt. What if we build wisdom by paying attention to what brings us alive too? Delight is information. Curiosity is information. Awe and wonder, that's information. Joy is information. Not instructions, it's information. And when something repeatedly lights you up, maybe you don't just have to justify it immediately. Maybe you can simply allow it to matter. Your next chapter may already be getting your attention. And here's really what I want you to go away with. If you're sitting there thinking, or driving your car, or walking the dog, whatever you're doing, but if you're thinking, I don't know what I want next, maybe that's okay. Maybe you don't need the answer yet. What if it's just perfect that you don't have the answer yet? Instead, ask yourself, what has been getting my attention lately that I don't fully understand yet? So think about those things I just mentioned. What are you curious about? What do you keep returning to? Maybe it's something you envy, or that feeling of delight. What is it? Maybe it's something you've been dismissing, or maybe it's something you're suddenly tired of. Maybe you just can't stop thinking about something, or maybe it's that little whisper of, ooh, wow, I'd really love that. Don't fix it. Don't turn it into a goal. Don't make a 5-year plan. And you don't have to buy a certification. Apparently, I've got that covered for all of us. Just notice. Stay curious. Have the patience to tolerate the gap. And trust yourself enough to let what you notice matter before you know what it means. And I know how hard this can be. But just try it, because you've lived a lot of life. You've accumulated an extraordinary amount of experience. And the wisdom you continue building from that experience can be the foundation for how you choose to live the time that's still ahead. Age gives you more life to learn from. Wisdom comes from becoming increasingly skilled at learning from it. And then you get to use what you've learned. You get to trust yourself, to lead yourself, to notice that delight, to allow the wonder, to choose intentionally, to actually be here for your life, to live like time matters, because it does. It really does. That's it for this episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Women in the Middle Show. Please remember to share it with your friends and other midlife gals that you know would get a lot out of it. If you are getting a lot out of this episode, please consider leaving a 5-star review, which will help other midlife gals also find the show. Being the queen of your brain domain is the best way to be. It is time to stop living like time doesn't matter, because it does. Remember, if you need coaching support for the changes you're excited to make in midlife, I'm here for you, and I offer group and private coaching. Head over to www.talktosusie.com. For show notes and links, go to www.susierosenstein.com and click on the podcast tab and look for episode 474. And you'll also see a link there for my other show, The Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, which is all about the reality of running your business when you're a midlife gal. It's also on iTunes, Spotify, and all the podcast places. Let's do this, ladies. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. Thanks so much for listening, and I will talk to you next week.